Hey everyone. And hey everyone. We should be streaming live now. We're trying to do a video on the ISOM, which is basically the Rippaverse, the first comic book of that series. And this is John, also known as the J-Rest Break. He does a lot of our shorts throughout the week. And he had a
hmm
very interesting idea. He wanted to talk about this and have the conversation about, is ISOM, the Rippaverse, is that a positive for conservatives? Is it a negative? Is it something that is it good in and of itself? A little bit of all of that. And so
hmm
we're going to try and have that conversation. We apologize if things seem a little odd, if the sound isn't quite right, because we've been testing. We're trying to get it on Zoom, onto OBS. So we have some problems. Please let us know if you're having problems with the audio as we go forward. But with that
hmm
said, John, introduce yourself.
So, my name is John. I do the J-Rest break on Soundbites Allowed. I've worked with Mike for a number of years now. We've been friends. We've done shows together, different things. And just to get started, I kind of give a background on this. For me personally, I'm a big comic book fan, and I started rereading a lot of old DC books recently. Okay. Specifically a lot of the Silver Age stuff, some of the Bronze Age, nothing really modern, but I wanted to see what else was out there. Okay. And I'm a fan of Eric July, okay, also known as Young Rippa. He runs a YouTube channel, previously worked for The Blaze, is a libertarian commentator slash conservative commentator who did his own comic book, right? So he was tired of seeing what the woke comic book industry had become and obviously wanted to do his own comic book. So I read it and I thought, and as you will probably see, as I'll point out, I think it's terrible, right? This book was kickstarted, crowdfunded. And so me and Mike obviously have political conversations a lot outside of the show. I called up Mike. I said, Mike, what do you think? Like, what do you think about this? Do you think this is a net positive, net negative? And Mike, what did you respond with?
Oh, I think the Rippaverse is actually a positive for conservatives, for entertainment, for the public in general. It's a good statement against Hollywood. I like it. I like the concept. And then there's the actual first issue of the Rippaverse, which is ISOM, ISOM. I think it's pronounced ISOM.
Mhm,
And so there's that itself. So there's two different things that are at play at the same time right now.
mhm,
That's the way I see it. Is there's two different concepts. Is it politically, is it a good thing? Artistically, is it a good thing? And whether it's good politically or as entertainment, do they combine or are they completely separate in it being good overall? So I think those are the
mhm.
three different questions about this. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And when I heard that, it stuck with me, right? When you told me that, what your thoughts were on it as a whole. And as you'll see my argument, they're so deeply tied. Okay. What's good politically is going to be tied into the actual quality of the book, in my opinion.
Okay.
Right. And I'll be making that argument, obviously, throughout this conversation and debate. And like I said, it stuck with me to the point I challenged Mike. I was the one who initiated this. I said, Mike, I'll challenge you to a debate on this. I'm not used to debates, obviously, but I challenged Mike to this debate and I wanted to have this conversation because I think at the end of the day, we both care what's good for the conservative movement,
Mm-hmm.
right? We want to see our conservative movement succeed. We want entertainment to get better. And
Mm-hmm.
we are so sick of the woke entertainment. However, my point is going to be as conservatives, if we all offer an alternative, it has to be quality. Otherwise, it doesn't matter and is actually going to hurt the movement as a whole.
Okay. I
Okay.
understand. I understand your reasoning on that. I'm not sure
Mm-hmm.
that Sorry, I'm trying to bring up the chat. Oh, hey, look, chat is there. So, everyone in the chat, we're trying to bring that up for everyone. All right, that doesn't work quite right. Here, we'll put it in the middle here. So the chat will be up there. I can't see it right now because my system is acting all stupid. But there is a chat. People can see
I
it.
have it up on my screen as well.
You have, okay, because I can't see it
Yep.
right now.
Yeah, I have it
and
up
I
on my
know
screen.
we're up on Rumble as well. So
Sweet.
that being said,
So I think we should probably start with Mike. You read ISOM #1, as did I.
yes,
What did you think?
I don't like. Well, I like parts of it. I think it's a decent first issue by a brand new company. So you're looking at it having elements of the 1970s Luke Cage Power Man comic book. That seems to be a very big inspiration for it, is that look, that image. And the dialogue doesn't quite work for me. The directing didn't quite work for me, but it had a lot of good elements in it. And it's kind of like when Image Comics first started, that's back in the 90s. The Gen 13 series, as a great example, went through 3 volumes, or in other words, 3 restarts of that same concept, that same storyline, because they didn't get it right the first time. So I think ISOM is kind of in that same realm. It's a throwback to the 1970s, an homage to that. It has a lot of the problems that we saw for Dark Horse Comics and Image Comics in the 90s. It has a lot of great elements. It's decent for what it is, and I think it was good overall.
I gotta completely disagree. So
Okay.
I was not a fan of the writing. I thought at times it was either confusing with Eric July doesn't quite strike a balance with giving the readers enough and giving the readers too little, right? You want to strike a balance between those two, right? You don't want to give away everything, obviously, right? And you want the readers to figure it out on their own, but there's some things you have to tell the readers. And there are points in that book where it becomes very, very awkward. All right. An example would be with the term the excepts.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So you're introduced to the term the excepts within like the first couple pages.
Yeah.
Right. And that should be a core idea throughout the book that you kind of know up front what is an except.
No,
Instead, you'll find out.
I think that was understood. You understood what an except was because
I had no idea going in, and whenever they said except, I had no idea what they were talking about.
super being, whether a mutant or artificial.
Right, and they explained that later on, and Eric explained that in as I saw previous episodes, right, of his show and different things like that. But someone who hadn't seen anything about ISOM other than that he created it, me going in as a new reader, had no idea what he was talking about. It sounded awkward, right?
I didn't think
Also,
because as someone I've read X-Men and Spider-Man since the 1970s. I've been involved in, obviously I follow D&D and 40K and science fiction. So it's kind of a given that when I go into the comic book world, these people who are flying around, tossing cars at each other, they're not the normal person. And that not normal person in this universe has the term except. Okay, fine. You can call him a mutant, you can call him a Kryptonian, you can call him a lot of things, but it's the same thing.
right, I agree, but the term except doesn't really explain in the name. Like if you say a mutant, you automatically know, oh, there's something different about them, right? You automatically kind of realize the term except, I hear that, I don't think superpowered being.
Yeah, but
I don't.
It's like Gen 13, and I'm going to point to the Image Comics, and they had Gen 12s, Gen 10, Gen 13. That doesn't really tell you anything, but that's what's in the story. you understand by context, both of the imagery and the wording, that, okay, these are super beings. It's just another way of saying super beings. That didn't bother me. Maybe he could have made it more.
Because keep in mind too, this is for people who might, and he says this in the very beginning of the book. These are for people who might not have read a single comic in their life.
Yeah.
Right.
But you've seen a movie.
So, potentially, we don't know, right? Because he expects this is for anyone, right?
Yeah.
He made this, he wanted this, and this was part of his mission, to be as accessible as humanly possible to everyone, regardless of your knowledge base, right?
Okay.
So if I'm coming in as a new reader, that would be confusing, especially because I have read comics. So that was one of the major issues I kind of saw, because he introduces these terms and different things, and I kind of get lost because he just throws so much stuff out like that. I felt throughout the book. The other problem I had was the art.
Okay.
That was a huge problem for me.
It wasn't consistent. That's the problem I had with the art is it isn't consistent. The artist isn't used to drawing comics.
Actually, he is.
Then he screwed up because
It's
it's
Cliff
not
Richards,
consistent.
the guy who, right. So for those who don't know, the guy who actually did the art was Cliff Richards. He did the penciling and the ink work. Okay, Cliff Richards. If you don't know, he's done Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman, Buffy the Vampire Slayer for Dark Horse, the OMAC project, which is the follow-up to one of DC's bigger titles, Tower of Babel, in the 2000s. I mean, this guy's a veteran. So there should be no excuse. The art is not up to par. I mean, when you see it, it looks like a first draft.
No, I wouldn't even call it a first. I don't call it a first draft. It's inconsistent. And this is a problem with, and Eric July needs to take some criticism here because he inconsistently directed this. It wasn't up to, it doesn't matter that it's a 1970s feel. It's not the problem of the type of art it is. It's that it's not the same thing. The lead character, Avery, looks different panel to panel. And that's a problem. And many of the other characters have different, almost different takes. So it's not even that they're sketching it because you'd be sketching the same thing. But, you know, we have different angles that are being shot, and it seems to be something that the Cliff is not accustomed to. Some of the angles that he's trying to draw from are things that he's not comfortable with. And so the faces are coming off very differently than the panel before it. And that's a problem. So yeah, it's not consistent. Several of the splash shots, very nice. That's a big page with that big action scene. He's got several of those, very well done. He's got some of the panels, very nicely done. But no, it's not consistent.
And I think like one of the big examples, and I'm going to pull up my screen here because I do. And by the way, the book is not in red. Okay. It is not in red, but I wanted to show kind of an example of what I meant. Like for me, what one of the big problems I saw was, oh, you disabled screen sharing, Mike.
No, I didn't.
Host disabled participant screen sharing.
I have no idea how to do that. Where's that under? I don't use Zoom.
Nor do I, so.
Screen share. There. How about that? Let's try it now.
Yes. So it should be. Okay, 1 sec. Got to do this through my thing now.
Well, that's on you.
This is, yes, that part is on me, yes.
Hope people are enjoying this. I'm looking forward to seeing the comments afterwards and during. It's a little bit of a different take here. All right, here we are.
Here we go. So, in this shot, you have our main character, Avery, kicking back with his feet, right? And this was the big one that I noticed. So you see, he's hit to a wall, and in this panel, he's got his feet dug in, right?
Yeah.
Jump to the next one. Okay. One, his anatomy is off.
Well, yes.
Right? Because he's kicking backwards. Two, And this is something I noticed throughout the entire book. The backgrounds are not good. The
I can live
background
with
work,
that. I can live with the background because that's not the focus. It's supposed to be on this
it
image here.
I gotta disagree. In a comic, you have to immerse the reader, right? And I mean, look at that wall, Mike. Does that
Yeah,
look like someone put some time and effort into that wall?
that wasn't their focus, obviously. But I know it's a
But
wall, so I'm okay.
I I gotta not good comics, like look at some of the best comics ever made, right? Some really quality stuff.
Yeah.
Watchmen, right? Some of the older pulp stuff. The backgrounds are detailed and build up the world that's around them,
Okay, wait
right?
a minute.
Right?
If you're talking about, and again, we have to compare this fairly. So this
Mhm.
is, we don't have the same kind of printers. You don't have the same kind of technology that you're going to have at Marvel or DC. You're not going to have the same, even the same technology of image. This is a startup, and there are
Mhm.
limitations in the printing and the transfer of image art to that printed medium, as well as just the artistic style. So I don't know if that was artistic style or the cost of printing the page and getting that medium out. These are all factors that are in there. So it's unfair to compare this image to modern Marvel, modern DC. It's
You know
somewhat
what?
unfair to even compare it to ISOM. If you're comparing it to maybe the 1970s, yeah, it's a
Let's
fair
compare it. Let's
comparison.
go back even further, Mike, because I actually planned, I knew you were going to talk about this,
Yeah.
right? Let's compare it to 1946. Does that be a
Okay.
fair comparison? Going all the way back. Let's go
Okay.
all the way back. And before I did the show, I went into DC Comics catalogs. I scrolled through random Detective Comics, right? I went through
Okay.
early Detective Comics and I looked for the first brick wall I could find. Okay?
Yeah.
That's what came up. All right, this is from Detective Comics 109, 1946. You can
Right.
tell very clearly what it is. It's a background shot. This was done in 1946 when the budget is much smaller, even for the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even for, compared to Eric July. Eric July invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into this before he even did the crowdfunding, right?
Right.
This is done in 1946 when comic books were seen not as an artistic form. This was seen as something for kids to put out and make as much money as possible under artist deadlines.
It's
You
very
can tell,
cinema.
though, absolutely not. No, because all the brickwork, you can see clearly all the brickwork, as opposed to this, where none of the brickwork is shown.
Yeah, but that's a difference in art style. And again, this is nitpicking. I don't find that to be essential because it's not an essential part of the action or the storyline. It's yeah, it's a wall. We know that. And there are many comic books nowadays, depending on the artists involved, which would have a similar scene. Like you can go to some of the what's his name, the Red Devil, Jersey Devil. They made two movies with him, three movies.
Daredevil?
No, 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 with the horns from
Yeah,
Jersey.
Daredevil.
No, no, no. Daredevil's
You said
from
horns.
no, no, no. Daredevil is from Manhattan, Hell's Kitchen. I said New Jersey.
Okay.
They made motion pictures about him, two of them. He's a beast. He's a demon lord. Got the big brick hand.
Oh, Hellboy.
Hellboy, that's it. Yeah, Hellboy has similar style.
I don't think this is an artistic choice, though, right? Because everything else looks kind of highly detailed. And the reason I bring this up is because this is the background done in this book. This is throughout the entire book, I've noticed. This is just one of the prevalent examples I noticed reading that stuck out to me specifically,
Yeah,
right?
but I think that's more. Again, I think that's more a question of if I'm going to spend the money, am I going to spend it on backgrounds or am I going to spend it on somewhere else in the comic? Because that's I
And
don't
I,
need to spend the money on the ink for the background.
fair enough, fair enough. But he also had a lot of money invested into this personally. But
Yeah,
that kind of goes
fantastic.
into, yeah, which is good. If this was a better quality thing, in my opinion. But so obviously, we kind of agree this is not a perfect comic book, right?
No.
No. But this kind of goes into the crowdfunding aspect, right? So the
Yeah.
big thing and why this broke headlines is because it made what $3.8 million through crowdfunding.
3.7, 3.7 and change, of course. Let's call it 3.8
Yeah,
for round numbers.
sure.
3.8 million on the first issue, broke 60,000 copies were purchased, which
Mhm.
is considered a breakout for comic books in the industry, which
Yeah.
is a positive signal against the woke message, a very positive message for conservatives and alternative media. And the second issue did $2 million, which is also
Yeah,
phenomenal.
but it's much lower. That's a significant drop.
But everything has a significant drop. You're almost every sequel, whether it's a movie, a TV show, you have a significant drop off. That's normal. That's not
Right. And
extreme.
for a first issue, I completely agree. But then you look at something. So the quality, obviously, I didn't think was there. And I think it reflects in both the second issue, right, with that drop off, and then Alpha Core #1, right? Another #1 issue that Eric July promoted on his channel and promoted in the Rippaverse that made significantly less than both, right? I think it made what, $1.3 million?
That's huge. Again, we're still talking for an independent, that's huge. It's still a very positive statement that the alternative media is working and that it is being effective. There's different art styles, you have different characters, you have different storylines going on. So, and you see that, I mean, Spider-Man doesn't sell like X-Men, doesn't sell like, what is it, Alpha Flight. It's just, they're entirely different. Avengers, West Coast and East Coast, not the same thing.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you're going to have different amounts of people interested in those characters, especially as they're all new and they're all taking off independently. We don't know who's going to be the breakout, where that story is going to develop the most. But we are seeing changes. I mean, there's a big change in the artwork and the quality of the art and the quality of the writing and the development of the story between ISOM 1 and ISOM 2. Big, huge. It increased. The quality increased. The storyline got a little bit more tight. The artwork got better. Still has errors, still has problems, but it improved. And I think that's a message to everyone out there that you can be not just a one-hit wonder by going against Hollywood, but that you can grow an entire industry without having to bow down to ESG, DEI, the whole woke mentality. And there is an audience out there, and I think that's the most important thing. There is an audience out there, and people are trying to say, well, it's, when, I don't know, Ms. Marvel, every time they come up with a new Captain Marvel comic book, the first one sells okay, and then it dies off, and it's gone, and it doesn't sell anywhere near the X-Men, Spider-Man, Iron Man. It just doesn't work, but they keep throwing it out there. And every time it has that first issue, it sells really well because of collectors. But no one's saying, well, issue 2 and 3, well, they failed. When they, what was it, the son of Clark Kent, when they made him gay, it was failing all the way. Issue 5, they made him gay, and on the cover, he's kissing another man. And the sales went up because it was controversial. And issue 6, the sales plummeted again. But people were saying, no, that's just normal. It's just went back to its normal, regular track. So again, what is the standard we're looking at? The standard I'm looking at is he is selling, and he's selling in the millions. There is an audience for this. And conservatives are stepping up with their dollars and saying, I know it's not perfect. It is improving. They are hearing what I'm saying, and I'm getting more development. So I want to support this. And that audience is kicking in rather than, well, you just had the Marvels. It sucked. Don't worry. Here's Madam Web. Live with it because we're not going to change what we're doing. We're going to give you even more of this kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
No, it does. But I think the drop off, especially for if you're to compare this to another conservative comic book Kickstarter, okay?
Well,
Because it's Cyberfrog. Let's take Cyberfrog, for example.
Who?
Okay. Cyberfrog, made by Ethan Van Sciver,
Don't know
right?
that
A
one.
prolific comic book writer, artist. Okay. He
Yep.
made a book called Cyberfrog. He was kind of the founder of the Comicsgate movement.
Yeah.
Issue 1, he did a Kickstarter similar to ISOM. Issue 1, $500,000. Okay. Back in 2020. Issue 3, $500,000 as well. That's issue 3, right? So in between, it's remained consistent. And that is pretty well regarded comic book series to fans, right? There hasn't been a significant drop off like there is with ISOM.
He also didn't have a significant peak. He didn't have the media attention. I don't know Cyberfrog, and I somewhat follow entertainment comic books to a degree, and I had no idea Cyberfrog existed. I knew ISOM existed. Most people, most normal people, most average people have heard about the Rippaverse. Nobody's heard of Cyberfrog. So the fact that it's got a niche, and that niche being Van Sciver's audience, fantastic. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but again, I can't compare apples and pears. There was a much higher expectation placed on ISOM because it was not going to DEI. It wasn't being woke. Even though it did have black characters, they weren't the atypical black characters. The world wasn't the atypical world that we see in Marvel or Disney in general. And because it was not that atypical, it had a far greater expectation of failure, and it had a far greater acceptance because it was different. As opposed to Cyberfrog, which, again, that's a niche. Nobody knew about it. It wasn't breaking the ground in the same way. Does that make sense to you?
I think it also has to do with platform, but
Okay.
I think it's okay, right?
Yeah,
it's a
that's
bit
a
of
factor.
like Eric July works for the Blaze, right, beforehand, right? So he's targeting a more general audience, right?
Yeah.
This Cyberfrog's targeting obviously a bigger comic book audience.
Yeah.
But the idea is still the same, right? These people who are investing are more likely to invest in other things, right? Politically. Because I would call this somewhat of a political investment, right?
Somewhat, yes.
Right? Because the whole goal of, Eric July was to essentially combat the woke narrative, right? A woke industry, and do his own thing. While it was just entertainment, the message behind it, and if you watch his core introduction video, he even talks about, I'm doing this because of the woke industries. I'm doing this because they're not treating legacy characters correctly, right? That was his whole message, right? So I consider it almost a political, I don't want to say donation, but a political investment, right? And these people are probably more likely to be involved in politics overall and actually be paying attention if they found, because this isn't like a regular comic book. You can't go to the store and buy ISOM, right?
No.
You actively have to search it out.
Right.
Meaning you have some investment already into politics or in general, kind of the whole Eric July audience, right? So, and I mean, I would compare it almost to a political donation of a candidate in the same sense, right? You're investing in a single individual. You're going out of your way to find it. You are likely politically aware. Same kind of thing, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, you had people like Geeks and Gamers. You had Nerdrotic. You had a lot of entertainment YouTubers that were talking about it. Now, as it so happens, a large number of the most popular YouTubers in terms of entertainment, especially around comic book, sci-fi, video games, the best ones are, or the most popular ones, tend to be conservative and against the DEI, against the woke narrative. And that's part of why they are so popular and why they are doing so well, because they are independent of the Disney machine. And so he was targeting that audience. He was in that pipeline. So the fact that there's politics there is kind of secondary. And it's one of the reasons why we're seeing these alternatives, the conservative alternatives, work. Because the politics is secondary, not primary. The Disney machine, which we see right now, the woke Hollywood, is all about politics first, the message first, and then maybe a story that might entertain. But that's secondary. That's way in the background. The first thing is, let's push this message, if not multiple messages, which qualifies it as propaganda and not entertainment. And that's the difference between Eric July and many of the others in Disney. What you're seeing is he's focused on entertainment first, imperfect as it may be, and he's getting a response that's positive because it is entertaining.
See, and then that's where I kind of disagree, right? I think the act of just donating to this campaign means you're getting involved politically in something, right? Because this is supposed to be, while it's not an overt political message, by no means, which I think is a positive for the book. It's not preachy, it's not propaganda.
No.
But the whole idea behind it is to fight those woke corporations and give an alternative, right?
Yeah.
So inherently, I would say
that's-
it is very political to donate to it.
there is an element of people who got involved with it because of the politics. Absolutely. And I can't tell you what percentage that may be.
We don't know.
No way to determine that. But I think that the main audience isn't political because it wasn't pushed as political. That's that's the backdrop. That's secondary. That's because I'm a political junkie. You're a political junkie. That's a bonus to us that we get to be entertained, and it's a slap in the face against the woke. Fantastic. But it wasn't because it wasn't there to be anti-woke. It was there to be entertaining. It's a story about a black lead character, his family, and their travails. It has a Hispanic character, it has white characters, it has a multitude of people who are in various positions, various types of characters, some of them good, some of them bad, that aren't restricted to the DEI quota system. It's not about the checkbox, it's about the story. And I think that's what makes me say, okay, I want to see ISOM 2. I want to see the Rippaverse grow because these are people. And they have different points of view. That's secondary to, I want to see these characters. I want to see this entertainment, see where it's going. But I don't want to see Madam Web. You can't pay me to see the Marvels or anything since the end of Endgame. I haven't watched Marvels. I really don't. Very little. Because it's not worth it. Because it's all about girl boss, woke, message. I don't care about that. And that's why there was a recent study. What are people watching on streaming? Are they watching the new stuff? Are they watching Witcher Origins or She-Hulk or Velma? No. They're watching everything they're watching Barney Miller. They're watching the Andy Griffith Show. They're watching Friends. I mean, they're watching all these old programs. They don't care about this new stuff because it's all propaganda. It's not entertainment.
I gotta disagree with the political junkie thing, right? That's how. Okay, because you actively have to find the Rippaverse through. Probably people learned about it through a multitude of ways, right? Watching Eric July's content, watching Geeks and Gamers, Friday Night Tights. So you automatically know what you're getting involved with Eric July, right? You automatically know kind of who he is. You've probably watched the show. You go to his page, right? You can find, if you go to the ISOM Rippaverse page, you can read about the author, Eric July. And one of the things he puts in there is his political beliefs, right?
Yeah.
Right. And how he's writing, this is a kind of counter to the woke agenda, right? This is a counter to it. Kind of what Disney and things are doing. So I would agree if like this was just a random person finding this book, but because you're actively going out and searching for it, odds are you are going to know at least something about Eric July and his politics and why he created this book in the first place.
Yeah, but that doesn't make people buy it. I know the politics of Brie Larson. And that was enough reason for me not to see Captain Marvel or the Marvels. Yes. But things like The Witcher Origins. I know the book is based on Polish people. I know the video games. And then there's the TV series and its spin-off. I don't watch this TV series and the spin-off, but the politics are very different depending on the medium and depending on the portrayal. How can I explain this? It's yes, it is a wonderful gimmick to say, I'm a conservative, so buy my product. Here's my entertainment. That's fantastic. And that'll get someone there maybe for the first time. They're not coming back again. If that's the only thing they get, if there's nothing inherently there beyond that, it's a one-trick pony. You're done. It's no different than woke. It's all about the message, and you're only going to hear the message once, but they just keep surrounding you with it one time, everywhere you go. So that's the trap that conservatives have to watch out for. Not the one-trick pony of, see, we're not woke. No, it's got to be substantive. You have to be substantive, whatever the format is, whatever the medium is, and then maybe in the background have that message. That makes sense?
Yeah, but to counter kind of your point, right? You talked about Captain Marvel. You know her politics. You didn't watch the movie because it got bad reviews. For this was a pre-order, right? So you had no idea going into what it was going to be like. Yeah. Okay? So these people had to donate based on what Eric was like, what he showed, and what he talked about before on these shows, right? So these people are going in blind, kind of. And you don't get a 40% drop if going from if it was quality, it would have remained pretty constant throughout.
No, I don't
if not
agree
grow
with
a little bit once the first.
No, I don't agree with that at all. Because if you ever read Lord of the Rings, and I read it back in the 1970s, okay? I had an image of the Lord of the Rings. In particular, one of my favorite characters is Gimli. I've seen several versions of Lord of the Rings until they got to Peter Jackson, what dwarves were. And my image of what a dwarf was isn't what Peter Jackson came up with. I like what he did, but that wasn't it. If I was only going by your mental image is always going to be different than the product you get or you consume. And some people will say, that is so different from what's in my head canon, that I can no longer follow that. There's the difference. And that's why art is art and entertainment is entertainment, and why there's so many different interpretations. Because the head canon you have isn't the head canon someone else will have. So you're going to always have a drop-off from this is going to be perfect and beautiful and wonderful, and it isn't. For everyone, it isn't. So you're always going to have that drop-off. I don't believe the bigger question would be, could he continue? Well, he has. He's still making millions of dollars. He's getting donations of millions. He's getting tens of thousands who are into this. We've got less than a minute here. Oh! Hang on, folks. We're going to try and get him back. Bear with me, folks. Well, that was annoying. I'm going to try and get him back in here. Bear with me. Come on. Hang on, folks. I know, that was annoying. This is what happens when you don't pay, when you're not paying for Zoom calls, and you're just doing it. "40 minutes went by fast." You get the link? Oh, there you go. There you go. Okay.
Can you hear me, Mike?
Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, that's like I said, folks. This is what happens. I'm a poor guy. I can't afford to be able to pay for Zoom because I don't use it all the time. So, bear with us. Donate. Donate. Anyway, go on.
That'd be nice, yeah. If only we could get some ISOM donators. That'd be great.
No, anyone, yeah.
But but
I don't need all his money, just,
a couple bucks would be nice.
a couple, $1.50. Join the Patreon, $1.50. There you go.
Check out our Patreon. But we were talking about, you were saying how you were talking about Gimli, correct? Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, Gimli, Lord of the Rings, headcanon. Your headcanon is always different. So there's always going to be that drop off of something that's brand new, that has never been seen before. You're always going to lose some of that audience when you present it. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, another great example. Hearing the audio program, great. Seeing the British version from the 1970s, fantastic. I recommend that to everyone. 12 episodes, really funny. Thought it was really well done by the BBC. Then they remade it for a modern audience, even though it had Alan Rickman, who I like. Actually, it had a couple of actors in there that I like. Complete failure. Complete failure. Horrible movie. They screwed it all up. Don't recommend it to anyone. My headcanon could not carry me through. Mind you, it's the same story. And if that's what's happening with the story, we know. Lord of the Rings, looking at Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Hell, you can even say that between Alien and Aliens. Forget about 3, 4, 5. Just the differences between, you saw Alien, which in the 70s was terrifying when it came out. And the first time you've ever seen that movie, it's terrifying. And then you go from that pure horror sci-fi to the action horror of Aliens, and they both work, but you're going to have a drop-off. So again, the same concept. So conservatives should not be afraid to say, oh, you may not see the same headcanon I do. That doesn't mean there isn't an audience for you, or that it's not worth the try. I think it is. And again, that's why I think ISOM is good. Even though it's imperfect, it's still good, both in what it is and what it does for conservatives.
What I think, here's where I kind of disagree, right? In the sense that, in my opinion, in economics, right? Basic economics, if a product is good, I consume it. And you talked about headcanon. I don't think it's really fair to compare this to Hitchhiker's Guide or to the Galaxy or Lord of the Rings, right? Because you started off already reading it, right? This is a new IP.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
Fair.
Right.
Fair
so
point.
it's like comparing apples to oranges in that sense, right?
Right.
But with ISOM number 1, Eric July had the attempt to hook you. He had as much time to iron out all of these things beforehand. He was working with a lot of different comic book experts. This was not on a deadline, right? This was not a deadline kind of project, in the sense that he could have delayed the Kickstarter. That happens to a lot of GoFundMes and things. He could have taken the time, in my opinion, to iron it out, because how likely, if you buy something, right, from a Kickstarter, and you're not happy with the product, how likely are you to donate to another kind of Kickstarter like that?
Well, we've seen the numbers. We've seen it with video games all the time. And the answer is one or few times. Let's be honest. Look at all the video games that have... Star Citizen still hasn't come out. Things made more money than Sin itself. I mean, it's crazy how much money that's gotten over the years. And yet that didn't stop Kickstarters for multiple games. I mean, you go to Steam, and you've got all these games that are in alpha phase, in the beta phase. Those early access games. They're all the same thing. Same thing as Star Citizen. They're still being funded by the same kind of system, many of them, where they have Kickstarters or they have private investors in the same way as, say, Star Citizen. But Star Citizen has been a sour grape for a lot of people because it did not provide what it really hasn't provided what people have been expecting. It's taken forever. It's been delayed forever. It's good and it's bad. And yeah, I also joined the Kickstarter for Star Citizen. One ship. $20 a long time ago, and I just don't even use it anymore. So I mean, it's imperfect, and the problem is we're being judged. Conservatives, libertarians, Republicans are being judged against this monolithic, progressive system that has been, not only does it exist, but it's been building up its walls to prevent anyone else from being able to have success. And you're judged by their metrics, not your own metrics, which is unfair. And it's meant to discourage people from going in. It's kind of like what we see with YouTube right now. YouTube, political commentary. If you're actually having an honest conversation, I don't care whether you're left, right, or center, if you're having an honest conversation about politics, you're going to be pro and against various candidates, various politicians, and there is no perfect politician or idea. But if you say that on a social media, like on YouTube, well, then you're going to be suppressed. The system is against you. And they're going to judge you against, I don't know, ABC News. They've got 10,000 people. I've got me. I'm not going to have the same look. I'm not going to have the same access. I'm not going to be able to access things in the same time frame or the same editing or the same B-rolls. But yet they're judging us against all those metrics and saying, oh, well, you don't match up, so you must suffer and you will be punished. And that's what I don't want to see happen with ISOM. Just because it's not Marvel, he shouldn't be judged as harshly. Yeah, he's going to not get every single person who's ever seen it to continue, but he has had a majority of the people have continued. And I think that's endemic of the success, the opportunity of success for more conservative leaning entertainment.
I think for me, I don't see the reason because, like I said, Eric July's friends with a lot of different people in the comic book industry. He could have had them look it over, right? And I think it would have been more impactful if he knocked it out of the park with this first issue, right? And if it spread, news spread, odds are issue 2 would have a bump probably, or at least similar numbers, because people are going to talk about this as a good quality product, regardless of politics. This is just a good product.
No, they wouldn't have got that. He wasn't being, Eric July and the Rippaverse was demonized before he ever showed anyone a single panel. He was never going to get mainstream acceptance, and he hasn't, because he can't. It's the same thing with Daily Wire putting out their movies with Gina Carano. They have to be demonized. Doesn't matter if they're good or not. They have to be demonized because they exist. When the documentary, What is a Woman, came out, it had to be evil. It had to be incorrect because it didn't match the messaging that was out there. And obviously, if you were to compare, say, the research and the style of What is a Woman versus, say, what was Al Gore's thing with the planet melting? Inconvenient Truth. Guess what? Factually, scientifically, empirically, What is a Woman is a far better documentary and news expose than An Inconvenient Truth, which has been denounced and debunked 27 times. So, but yet the left will say that is good and What is a Woman is bad, merely because, well, this is a conservative point of view and that was a progressive point of view. Does that make sense? Do you see where I'm going?
Yes, I see where you're going, but keep in mind, What is a Woman was universally praised by both conservatives and liberals that I talked to, and openly, even online critics, right?
No,
Like
it was demonized.
John Campea.
It was largely...
Oh, yeah, sure. But there were a lot of liberal critics who even said, this is a movie that you should watch because it's well made and well produced. Look at John. Do you know who John Campea is?
Yeah, but he's not... John Campea isn't the mainstream. He's... No, let me rephrase that. He is a voice of the mainstream, but he isn't the mainstream.
Right, but even on his show... his co-host said, I don't agree, but you should see this movie anyway, right?
No, I
Because it
understand
is
that, but
thought-provoking.
but
It's a quality film.
yeah, but he wasn't. The Rippaverse has been up against Marvel, Disney, and all of the access media. Not they demonized him for the concept, for even trying, and they really weren't. And let's be honest, the controversy isn't against the Rippaverse. It's not against Eric July. It's against conservative thought. It's against someone going off the reservation, off the plantation, to do something separate of what has already been established and very well controlled, especially by the left. And that is what the real controversy is. That's the real reason why it's being demonized. And that's my point about Regina Carano, with any kind of alternative. What is it? Sound of Freedom, a movie. Also, very well made, very impactful, very well acted, totally demonized and suppressed. Why? It didn't have the right messaging. And that's why I want to see more of them. Because even when we're not perfect, we are opening the door for the next thing that is perfect. Does that make sense?
Yes, but my point is I worry that if we don't nail it, right? If we don't really get a good product, solid product that a lot of people can enjoy out there, we lose some of those people and they might not donate again to another Kickstarter like it
I don't believe that.
or another project like that.
I don't believe
And
that.
let's look at, yeah, if you want to do an example, Mighty Number Nine. Okay, let's look at that Kickstarter.
Don't know it.
So Mighty Number Nine came out a couple of years ago. It was a huge Kickstarter for a lot of Mega Man fans. It got a ton of publicity, ton of press, surpassed its goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a terrible product. So when they wanted to do another game in the series, nobody invested, right? Not as many people invested. There was a huge drop off and it didn't get the investment. And while we don't have the stats on how many, I wish there was the stats to see how many people actually donate to another Kickstarter after maybe they got a product they weren't thrilled with, if they were going to try Kickstarter again. I just worry it alienates people.
But I don't think it does. Because, one, conservatives still exist. So if you're doing it because of the politics are still there, the movement is still there, people will still support it. And we're not talking about $2,000, $5,000, $20,000 to be invested in this. We're talking about $20. This is not world changing. This isn't changing your life. The extra $20 is not going to make you poor. It's just not. So this isn't life changing numbers. So people will continue. If it's politically the reason why they're investing, then they will continue. If it's artistic, well, that's a question of, did the art compel you? And I mean, have you been to the MoMA lately? Some of the art is ugly as sin. And we've got artists out there who are putting feces on the Virgin Mary and calling it art. And it's worth millions of dollars. I don't understand how. I don't know why. But that's what they say. So there is always that audience that is out there. I don't think that's going to stop anyone. I think that the left media will try and impress people that, oh, see, it didn't hit the metrics that our stuff isn't hitting, and so it isn't good enough. The left will try and sell that just like they tried to tell you, oh, if you didn't see The Woman King, well, you're an evil racist. Well, first of all, you changed the story. The Woman King wasn't a good person. They weren't the good guys. They were the bad guys in Africa. Let's start there. And then, was it well acted? Was it entertaining? Not really. So it failed. Has nothing to do with whether or not I'm a racist or I have internalized nationalist beliefs. It's just ridiculous. No, that's just the way they demonize you. And again, it's meant to corral people into a singular path that only has one outcome. You have to do this, or else you're the outsider. You have to be ostracized. And we're social beings, we're human beings. We don't want to be the one on the outside. 5% of our population don't care about being on the outside. Everyone else wants to be part of society, part of the crowd to some degree or another, because we're social beings. And that's the biggest threat you could possibly say is, we're going to eliminate you from social media. Oh my God, I'll be the outsider. I can't do that. Let me comply. And that's what it really is about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I just see it as if, as conservatives, we're trying to offer an actual alternative, right? A quality alternative to what they're doing, right? I don't want to see it broke records, which is great, but I wanted it to be higher quality so it didn't create apathy later on.
Okay,
Like,
there's
look
the
at the
key
Star
word.
Wars.
There's the key word. You want higher quality. It's not that it didn't have quality. The quality didn't reach the bar you wanted it to reach. And as I said, in ISOM 2, the quality improved. So it did take another step up. Is it still the best thing it could possibly be? Absolutely not. But is it improving? Yes. Trial and error, many business owners, small business owners realize, well, that first day, that didn't work out quite like we thought. Let's fix some stuff. And he is, and it has been improving. But again, it's not that there isn't quality. It's that you want higher quality. You have a higher expectation, possibly because it's conservative. It has a conservative base, foundation to it. Yeah, but that's, you're saying, okay, he was reaching for the sky, he got the clouds, and you're saying that's not quite good enough. I don't agree with that necessarily.
I don't think there was, like I said, I think it was objectively kind of bad. Like, it was very inconsistent, like you said. And like I said, I wanted to like it. I wanted to go in, right? I wanted to like it. Was giving him as many benefits of the doubts as I can. But because I didn't like ISOM 1, how likely am I to read ISOM 2? How likely am I continuing? I didn't, right?
I went on to 2. There were enough elements there that I was like, okay, where are you going with this? And I would actually read ISOM 3, because what was developed in 2 is enough. Another way to think of it is, there's many, I don't know how much anime you watch. There's a lot of anime out there, or manga, or manhwas, where the first magazine, the first 5 minutes, the first episode is crap. I mean, it's just horrible. It's like, really? Where are we going with this? What is the one with Attack on Titan? The first episode was just like, this is useless. Really, it was useless.
I completely disagree.
I
completely disagree. I thought it was a great opening episode.
I didn't think so. But it kept moving forward, and it got better. And we see this in a lot of anime. We see this in a lot of art in comic books, where your first episode, your first book is not the thing. People are not there for that episode. They know, okay, I'll give it another episode. The question is, are you going to be like Halo, which has a halfway decent first episode and then falls off a cliff because DEI, woke, jump off the cliff, take the helmet off of Master Chief, and you've ruined everything because you didn't get it. See, that's the difference. People are willing to forgive that first experience if it's decent, and ISOM was decent. ISOM at issue 1. And then came 2, and 2 improved on many of the elements that issue 1 came up with. And by the time you get to 2, episode 2, issue 3, when you're getting to Alpha Core, you're now stepping away from, okay, this is about conservatism, and it's about, this is art. And I think that's, the further you go, the less that political motivation is there, and more of the art is there.
I think no matter what, though, there's going to be that like objectively, ISOM number one, like I said, has nothing to do with politics art
No,
wise,
nothing to do
right?
with same thing with issue two.
Nothing to do. Absolutely nothing to do with it. But the reason for its creation, it came as a counterculture backlash to DEI, like you said, the woke
Mm-hmm,
properties,
mm-hmm.
right? And a lot of people donated for that reason, right? A lot of people invested their money because they know who Eric July is. They heard his message, right? With all his videos, he put that out there explaining why he made this,
Mm-hmm.
right? So even with the third issue, I think you're still buying it, one, not only for the story, but two, because you are tired of whatever's out there else. But it's getting to be less and less people. I think he had a real shot to make it. I think I wish I shouldn't say wish, if he knocked it out of the park with the first issue, I think more people would be hooked. We would see more people going to the second part. But like I said, I read the first issue. I didn't care for it. I'm going to put it down, right? And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are like that.
No, I don't. Well, yes, a lot of people are like that. Does that indicate that he failed, and therefore conservative alternative media failed? Because that's the
I think
message that's being spun. That's the message that's coming from the left right now against him is, well, he didn't hit the same targets. It's not great. So let it die. Conservatives don't know how to do art. They don't know how to do entertainment. That's what they say about Gina Carano and the Daily Wire. That's what they said about Sound of Freedom. They've said it about a lot of things. Right or wrong, that's the message out there. And I don't think that's a real fear. Because let's remember, the initial goal of Eric July wasn't 3.7 million or 60,000 copies. It was less than 10,000.
100,000.
He,
100,000 was his campaign goal.
yeah, it was $100,000, which would have been about 5,000 comics.
Mm-hmm.
So we are to say that it's not successful or it hasn't been as successful. He's had, what, 4,000% more success than he ever initially started, and he didn't even think it would get to, or he wasn't sure that it would ever get to issue 2. So, I mean, what's the criteria of success for, and again, we're looking at different criteria. It's sad, but we have different criteria of success for a conservative versus a liberal. The failures on the left, one after the other, and they're considered, it's all right, it doesn't matter, next product. And again, I go back to the Marvels, and I go to Madam Web. There's Velma, which got a season 2. Don't even know how. Well, I do actually, but it got a season 2. Complete failures, and they put out more of the drivel. They put out more, and that's still largely supported. Whereas we had someone who had success, 4,000% more success than was ever expected, and yet he's demonized. And he's said he's not successful enough. That's the problem. It's so ingrained in us that when the media is all pointing at someone saying, see, they're just wrong, even though you can say, but it's objectively an incredible, absolute, by definition, empirically, a success, a runaway success. This is a home run. And even with the reduced numbers in episode 2, it is a home run. It still massively exceeds what was the expectation. He's succeeding. He's doing what you want him to do. And I understand you want him to keep getting better, and I think he will.
I want consistency, right? Because he captured this audience. I want it to be consistency, right? And I think you get that through quality.
But what if that consistency
really
is
do.
500,000 people? What if that consistency is 20,000 comics, not 60,000? What if it's 5,000? That's still success. It's just not the level of success that we've seen in the past. But what if the consistency, that audience that he's targeting, what if it's only 5,000 issues? Did he fail? Just because he went to 60,000 first, but levels out and he does the next, he gets to issue 100, and he's doing $100,000 every Kickstarter for every issue, $100,000 up to episode or issue 100, $100,000 each time, 5,000 comics each time, going from now until 99. Did he fail? I don't think so.
I think he lost people on the way, right? He
Gonna
definitely
lose them
did.
anyway. Gonna lose some of the people anyway.
Sure, but not like a huge drop like he did.
Why not? Why wouldn't? There's no way to know. I can't hold him accountable for an unknown. We don't know what the audience is. He doesn't know what the audience is. Nobody knows what it is or what it will become. The X-Men weren't the great big X-Men landslide that we know of. In fact, when the X-Men started as a comic book, initially from the 60s, it wasn't until they came out with Volume 2, when they redid the X-Men, where they introduced...
Into Uncanny X-Men.
Huh? When they became the Uncanny X-Men. When you introduced the foreign characters, which would be Storm, which would be Wolverine, they killed Thunderbird. But that whole Krakoa Island changeover, that's when they became popular. That's when they started getting attention. It was a dead issue. They had to do that to reignite interest in it because it was dead. It wasn't going anywhere. So that's my point here. We don't know. Maybe issue 10 it suddenly becomes the hottest thing that has ever been done. Maybe he gets that consistent art style. Maybe it's Alpha Core. I know he has another artist who's trying to put together two female.
Are you talking
characters.
about the Soska sisters?
Yeah, the sisters.
Okay.
That's another one. Maybe it's going to be that one. I don't know. I just want the Rippaverse to exist. And I want someone else to come up with the Johnverse. I want someone to come up with the, libertarian verse, whatever it is. I don't care. I honestly don't care. I want them to make it. Some of them will succeed, some will fail, but I want them to be out there because the ones that do succeed will enrich everyone far, far more than if we just allowed the woke DEI progressive system to continue to monopolize everyone.
And I agree. We need to create, and I think we both agree, we need to create an alternative space, right? We need to create alternatives to what the left is offering, the DEI and the woke agenda. But we want them to succeed, right? We want them to grow. And eventually we want them to show that these companies, hey, they're doing way better than your other properties. And that's only going to come with quality and consistency, I think. And I guess it is a little too soon to tell what's going to happen to ISOM. They're only on issue 2, right?
Right.
They've just released Alpha Core, right?
Right.
And I guess we'll see over time if it continues to grow and how big that drop off continues to be, because he had that initial audience who were super excited, super interested. I mean, they were excited enough to go to this campaign page and donate to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's a different kind of person than who's going to go see a Marvel movie, right? These are people who actively want this to succeed, because it's not like with Marvel movies where you can go out to any theater, right? You actively have to go to the Rippaverse page. You have to actively find the page, right, through alternative means, and donate to it without seeing the product.
It's not that much of a difference than going to Fandango, buying your ticket, and going to see a movie. The big difference is there's a lot more marketing and a lot more push for you to see Disney Marvel than it is Rippaverse, but even in terms of cost, they cost about the same. The number of steps you take are about the same to commit that same amount of money. The big difference is, you'll see the Marvels,
I would say accessibility.
And you'll hate your life. You'll see the Rippaverse, you'll have a copy of the Rippaverse, that comic book, and you may have it for the next 20 years, and you'll still get more enjoyment than you ever get from the Marvels or from Madam Web or anything that Disney, Marvel, Disney, Star Wars has done.
I would say it's also, I would disagree with the accessibility aspect, right? Because Disney's putting out in how many theaters, right? Around you,
4,000
right?
for
A lot more
for a big
places
one.
that where can you buy the Rippaverse? One place. You have to go to that
Online.
one place as opposed to going just their website, essentially, as well as eBay if you want to rebuy issues and things like that. So it is way more accessible to go to these big Marvel movies and things like that. So I would say these people are more dedicated, right? The people who backed it are more dedicated.
To an extent.
And right, because it's not even just your regular comic book people who can just go into their comic book store and pick it up. Like the Rippaverse is only seen, as far as I know. I don't know if it got into any comic book retailers, but as far as I know, you can only get it on Eric July's website. So I think those people are more passionate. I think a lot of them were let down, and I don't know how many are going to continue backing other Kickstarters, is my argument. I worry that it creates apathy if the quality isn't up to what they expect and what he has promised. Right?
No, I don't think so. You know what? Let me put it in another way. I was a stockbroker. I did that for almost 10 years. And there's something that are called bridge loans.
Okay.
It's a type of loan where you loan a up-and-coming company. You do this for companies that are going to do IPOs and such. These are brand new companies, usually startups that are just getting onto the market. They're developing their idea. Accredited investors. These are a select group of investors who've been in the market. They have enough money that they can lose hundreds of thousands without becoming destitute. They have enough time in the market that they are aware of what their investments, what the risk reward ratio really is. And so they buy these things, these bridge loans, these pre-IPO companies. And the goal is you'll go into 10 of them. And 8 of them are absolutely going to fail. Now, it's going to cost you $250,000 per each of these investments. So you're not losing just a little bit of money. So 8 times you'll lose $250,000, complete write-off, lost. One time you'll break even. And then the home run will make you 10 to 20 times your money. Problem is, you don't know which one of the 10 that you got in front of you, and sometimes it's 20, sometimes it's 5, but it's going to be that one that's going to make the money. You don't know which one it is. But they will lose $250,000 each and every time to get to that one success. That is Kickstarter. That is the Rippaverse. That is entertainment from alternative medias, and even looking at YouTube and supporting when people go to Patreon, when they do the what do you call it, the chats, the super chats. It's the same idea. You don't know what the return is going to be on that, but you do it anyway because you'll hit.
It is like
eventually.
the lottery. It's like a gamble.
Yeah.
But how many people just stop after one ticket versus how many continue?
Not very many, because I know we've had, how big has the lottery been so far? I remember when the lottery first time hit $1 million. Okay, I'm old, I know. But I remember the first time when it hit, the lotto is $1 million. Everyone was like, oh my God, that's huge.
Well, that's also adjust for inflation there, Mike.
Now, forget about adjusting for inflation. I'm talking about, the first time we heard lotto, you can get $1 million. Oh my God, it was $1 in a dream because you dreamed of becoming a millionaire. Now we're talking about tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, and people lose every week. A lot. Not just once, a lot. Every week, maybe 2 or 3 times a week for years. So, no, I don't think the Rippaverse will not end the conservative investment into alternatives, whether it be comic books or YouTube, Patreon, whatever, it's not going to stop it. In fact,
I don't think it'll stop it.
I think it's an encouragement that says, look at this success. I'm imperfect and I succeeded. So can you.
But we didn't know it was going to be imperfect when he announced it, because he did promise quality.
And
He
it has
promised
quality. It could have more quality, but it has quality. Can't say it doesn't have any. It does.
it's pretty bad. I mean, it comes down to our opinions of it, and I think it's really objectively bad.
It is
There,
objectively imperfect, but I see the potential in it. I can say the same thing about, there's some TV shows and manga and anime that I watch because it can get better. I mean, there's things like the reason why you watch Halo Season 1, Episode 1 is because you hoped Episode 2 would be better. It wasn't, full stop. I watched The Umbrella Academy, Season 1. It was good. Season 2, I wanted it to get better. It kind of stayed the same, maybe dropped a little bit. Season 3, fell off of a cliff, stopped. I made it to Episode 3 and I was done. That's the risk you take. So we got 3 minutes. Remember, we just got 3 minutes and we got to go.
Yeah. So to wrap it up, as I've said, my final thesis is I worry if ISOM didn't do great, how many people are just going to stop doing Kickstarters overall? We don't have the stats on it, but we've seen drop-offs similarly in properties and different things that didn't really succeed and then continue to drop off and become dead IPs. I worry about that. How many people dropped off? And is it gonna, if people see this drop off, are they more likely to invest, especially these new people who are getting into it, who are new investors? Maybe they haven't done a Kickstarter, they get the product, they see this isn't great because this is supposed to be marketed toward everyone as a whole. So that's my final thesis. And I guess we'll see as well with issue 3 on how well it does. And we'll see if it picks up or drops.
Yeah, I truly do not believe that ISOM or anything like it, whether Daily Wire, any of the alternatives, I do not believe that the failure of any one of them is going to prevent the people who would be willing to do these donations from donating to the next thing. As an example, if you donated to ISOM number 1 and you didn't like it, maybe you won't donate to Alpha Core. Okay, I give you that. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to go to donate towards the Sound of Freedom, or to Gina Carano getting something done on Daily Wire, or doing a Patreon. It's not going to, it may stop you from going back to that same source, but it won't stop you from doing it over that support overall. And I think that's an important thing. I know we've got about 1 minute left. So this was a little bit different. I hope people found it kind of interesting. Obviously, unscripted, wild and loose.
Yep.
As you can see, my puppy here is now screaming at me because we are interrupting and he's supposed to go out. So he's screaming at me now. I enjoyed it. We can do this again, John. Especially since now we figured out how to do it with Zoom. So
yeah, and it was a different conversation because we agreed to disagree, I think, on this one, and we're going to see in the future what happens, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to see if this has an overall effect on the industry, and I think it's good to have these conversations in our sphere, most of all. We need to have more conversations like this.
Yeah, because conservatives aren't uniform. We do disagree sometimes. Not a bad thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But thank you, Mike, for having me on for the debate.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it, and I hope everyone watching enjoyed it as well. See you guys tomorrow, Sunday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the regular live stream that we do. Oh, wow. Made it in time to get that on. And then it cut off. That's funny. Where am I? Okay.